Once I've chosen my design, I go to the computer and I type out the word joy. You can use any program that has a lettering font product in it, Word, Publisher, anything like that. What I did is just typed out the word joy. This font size is set at 450, although the little drop-down arrow only shows you 72 as the largest size on most things. You can actually just type in that box till you find the size you want. And this again was either 400 or 450. What I'm wanting to do is transfer my design, but I don't want to use a fusible product like Heat and Bond because I want this to be on a product stitched onto Cuddle, soft, fuzzy fabric, and Heat and Bond doesn't necessarily stick well to that, and if my fabric has any texture, the texture will go away when I iron it. So I want a tracing and transfer method that will not affect my fabric. What I'm using is a product called Floriani Heat and Gone. It is designed for machine embroidery, but it works great with your sewing machine also. It looks kind of like a piece of saran wrap. Don't use saran wrap, it does not work. What I'm going to do is lay that right over the top of my design, and I'm using it kind of like a tracing sheet. I'm putting just some paper tape around the edges just to hold it so it doesn't slide while I'm tracing my design. I'm going to use a Sharpie marker to trace around my lettering. Normally I would use the small size, so I would get a real fine line to stitch on. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's going to be easier for you to see on the camera if I use the wide side. So remember, on your project you're going to use the fine side. And I'm going to just trace around my lettering, getting it as smooth as I can. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is actually the line that we are going to sew on. So you want it to be pretty good. The other thing is, if you remember, I said we're going to sew with Cuddle fabric, which is shaggy, and that is real forgiving. When you sew around the edges, the fuzz kind of wraps over your stitching, and it'll look real nice even if your stitching isn't just perfect. And if you make a little mistake, you can draw a second line because we're going to be stitching over that. So I'm just going around. Curves are always a little harder. They're also a little harder to sew. Not real difficult, but you have to go slow as you're stitching. You want your satin stitch that's covering that edge to be nice and smooth. So when you're going around a curve, you might stitch maybe 4 or 5 stitches and then pivot, meaning plant your needle, raise your pressure foot, and twist your project a little bit while you're sewing. And I think I've got it all. When I'm done tracing, I'm going to just take away the tape. And when I lift this up, I'm going to pull the paper out from under here. I have my template design ready to go. You might be wondering why I started with creating your design. The reason I did that is I wasn't quite sure what size project I wanted to make, and by doing this template first, I can now preview it onto different things. I thought I might do a pillow, and I pulled a 12-inch form. It was too small. This is a 16-inch pillow form, and I think that's just about the right size for what I'm looking for. So I've got my 16-inch pillow form decided upon. Then I pick my fabric. I've decided to use this cute little home print that matches some other things that I've got, and I can look and say, yep, kind of get a feel for, I think that'll be dense enough to be able to see the design on this print. Then I picked my Cuddle fabric, which is going to be red, and so my joy is going to be appliqued in red on the Cuddle. The next thing I need to do is prepare my my pieces for my project. I've decided I'm going to do this fabric. I like my pillows to have a little bit more texture than just a single layer of cotton. Gives them a little more body. You can use fusible interfacing. You can use a fusible quilt batting, works nicely. For this, I'm going to just use a piece of Shape Flex. This is a fusible woven interfacing type product. There's a rough side and a smooth side. The rough side goes against the back of my fabric. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put the rough side against the back. Then I'm going to take that over to the ironing board and press that according to the directions. Again, rough side towards the back. I'll go do that and show you the next step, and then I'll come back when those two steps are done. This is my Cuddle fabric, and Cuddle has a nap, means you can see the way that the fabric moves. This is the direction of the Cuddle is coming down this way. That is against grain. I believe you'll be able to see that. I want to have my grain coming down so that when I put my word joy on here and I sew it down, the letters are going to be smooth. If I put it the other way, I put my joy this way, my letters would always look rough. So I want to have it this way. And I'm going to just use, I only need a small corner of this. I want to prepare the Cuddle fabric as well. This stretches, and again we talked earlier about not wanting to use an iron on Cuddle. This is smooth, so it really doesn't make that much difference. But anything like the minky dots and any of the textures, they will iron out. So the way I'm going to stabilize this, and stabilization is the big issue, by having this stable and not stretching, it makes your applique look much better, much smoother. So what I'm going to use now is another Floriani product. It is called Perfect Stick. It is a stick-on stabilizer. This is again normally used with embroidery machines to put projects in the hoop. I'm going to double check that my grain is going the way that I want it to. And I've got a piece of Perfect Stick about the size that I need. This just peels apart. I say, there we go. It peels off, and this side is sticky. And what I'm going to do is get that out of my way and start to peel the rest off. I want to get my edge. You can also use a pin to score this, and then it will start to peel off nice and straight. All I'm going to do is fold some of the backing out of my way. This doesn't have to be perfect placement because I've got some space around my design. So what I'm going to do is just stick it down here in the corner, and I'm going to just peel this across and gently push this. As you can see, it's not perfectly straight, but it's just fine for what I need. When I flip it over, my joy has got plenty of room for the stabilizer to be behind my whole project. So this piece now, I can trim away the excess because I only need enough for my letters using my favorite rulers cutting mats, the Quilters Select. I'm going to just cut here. And I've got plenty of room, so I don't need to worry. I can trim off a little up here. Nice thing about this blade is if you are able, it is ambidextrous, so you can go either side. Nope, didn't quite catch the start there. There we go. And then when I do this side, I can just close my blade, open it from this side, and trim off right along here. So I'm ready to go. You'll see I picked up some Cuddle fuzz along the way. I'll just use a little bit of tape. The nice thing about the mat is don't push super hard with your cutter. And these mats, this Quilter Select mat, is a little more dense, a little stronger than other brands that I've used. And it doesn't push the Cuddle fuzz, the razor blade doesn't push it down into the mat. So I'm going to just clean this up. We have a little tiny vacuum cleaner here that we use. Those work well. Otherwise, you can just use a little bit of tape, masking tape, or one of those lint rollers. It picks that up real easy. I'll be back in a minute after I go prepare my fat quarter and my shape flex. I'm just about done cleaning up the edges of my Cuddle. I used my lint roller to roll the edges along my mat. And now I'm just rolling the edges of the fabric to be sure I've got all that red Cuddle fuzz out of the way. You want to brush that away rather than go to your sewing machine. You don't want the fuzz to get into your machine. If you do, just be sure to go in with your little brush and clean it out. So I have my piece of fabric with the shape flex fused to the back. And now I'm going to just rough cut this out. I want it to be, I'm doing a 16 by 16 pillow. I usually will initially trim to a couple inches bigger. That allows me to make adjustments if I accidentally place my design crooked. It gives me room to rearrange and cut the square differently rather than having it be a wasted piece of fabric because you need to change something. I'm going to just roughly cut this out. This was a fat quarter, and so it was already 18 tall. And again, this is just a rough cut, so I'm just going to cut that edge off. So I'm at about 18 by 18 right now, and I can do all kinds of measuring if I want to, but I don't. I have a fabric that has kind of a line running through. You can see the word home runs across here pretty evenly. And so I can just kind of take it like this and gently finger press a crease. So that's kind of right there. It'll be hard to see on camera. And then midway, I'm going to do the same thing. And I'll be able to see just about the center. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect because I've cut my project a little bit bigger. So I'm going to put that center point right about the middle of my joy, and I'm going to look to see that the bottom of my letters are even kind of with that red edge of the word home. And that should work out nice. I'm going to just put a small pin in here for a minute. That will hold that in place. I'm going to check the grain of my fabric. That's going the wrong way. This is going the smooth way. And so now I'm going to take my Cuddle with my perfect stick on the back, and I'm going to just slide it right underneath my joy. And actually I should have pinned that a little bit better. I'm going to just straighten that out again. I'm going to put a second pin in there so it keeps that top straight, and that I can lift this, slide this under, and it just has to cover the words. I don't need a lot of space anywhere. This doesn't have to be perfectly centered. So that's where I'm going to place it, and I'm going to just grab some pins, and I'm going to go through all the layers. The home fabric, the stabilizer, everything. And I'm going to just pin this again through all the layers around here. And what that's going to do is it's going to hold this in place while I sew. And I usually use 5 or 6. I just don't want my plastic product to slide there. I think I might do one more pin there. Of course, one more than I had in my hand. All right. Okay, so that looks good. And you know, I might even put a pin in the middle of the O. I just don't want things to slide again. Put one more up here. Okay. And then I'm going to stick one right in the middle.